what I told him. I called a meeting of the regular Board of Directors Wednesday, July 15th, Joshua Basin Water District. And I'm going to ask Frank Code if he lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Determination of a quorum. All right, item number 4, election of officers. I will entertain a motion for the office of president.
Bob, if you'd like to do it again, I would nominate you.
All right. I accept.
Second?
Third?
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
I'd just like to say, Bob, last year we had a very contentious meeting about filling the vacancy left by Mickey Luckman's passing. You showed real leadership and broke a tie that went on for hours, and that really impressed me. I thought that was really leadership, and so I'm happy. Call the roll.
All right. All right, General Manager, you want to call for the vote?
Director Flowen?
Aye.
Vice President Unger?
Aye.
Director Reynolds?
Well, that's the very reason I didn't like you that one night. But I still vote aye.
And President Johnson?
Oh, I guess I get to vote for myself. Aye. All right, so moved, so done, so thank you very much. With that, I'll entertain a motion for Vice President. And with that, I'd like to nominate Rebecca Unger.
Oh, thank you. I will take the nomination, but I will also not dig in my heels if somebody else wants to be vice president, or my fellow directors want somebody else to be vice president.
I second your nomination.
Thank you.
All right, any discussion? Not, General Manager?
Director Reynolds?
Aye.
President Johnson?
Aye.
Director Flowen?
Aye.
And Vice President Unger?
Aye.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll just keep our seats here, then don't have to move.
I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, item number 6, public comment. At this time, we set aside for public comment on any district-related matter not appearing on the agenda. Government code prohibits the board from taking action on these items, but they may be referred for future consideration. Please state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Are there any public comments? We have a kind of one.
Jane Jarlsberg. I wondered why the approval of the minutes are not on the agenda.
Where?
You're good. All right, any other public comments? Seeing and hearing none, I'll move to item 7, consent calendar. Matters on the consent calendar are considered routine in nature and will be enacted in a single motion without discussion. Any board member or member of the public may request that an item be removed from the consent calendar and acted on separately. We have for the consent calendar the Finance Committee check registry on November 2019 and the draft minutes from our special meeting on December 19th. Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I had a couple of questions on the check register, if I may.
Sure.
There was a check to the Quinn Company for generator maintenance and repair. Page number 4 of 30. And I know those generators hardly get used.
If I remember correctly, go ahead, General Manager.
That's a biannual testing and repair of our generators. It's typical load testing and things like that. It's completed.
Okay, and I was just curious they hardly get used. Why with so much money?
Me too.
Next question, the Andy's Landscape for $650 for the demo garden. I've been noticing that, and I've been meaning to ask, is that a regular, just a regular maintenance fee, once a month, $650?
Monthly, correct, yes.
Okay. That was the only questions I had.
For me, if I may, I'm noticing Inland Waterworks, there's about $27,000, several entries.
Page.
That we're on page 3 of 30. Sorry. And I was intrigued if this is part of our Saddleback project.
This is actually inventory for mainline leak repair. So it's everything that we need for repairing leaks out in the field, different parts and material related to that.
So there's plenty to do here. It isn't just the Saddleback
Correct.
project where we're replumbing. There's lots of
More
other
than that,
things
yeah.
that are expensive and occur.
Correct.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any public comment? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. So moved, so done. Excuse me. Item number 8, receive first quarter ending financial report.
All right, we start on page 19 of the packet, but 19 is the summary. So if you're going to read nothing else, then read this, but we're going to talk about it all, so we'll start on page 20. Page 20 gives our cash balances as of September 30th. The district had $9.8 million in total, of which $973,000 of that relates to our CERP program. So that's money held by the third party trust, which is specifically the loan proceeds. This is what remains from our $3 million loan as of 9/30. As of today, that number is about $795,000. Get the mic closer to me, I guess, huh? Okay. We've got 5.2 million of that is legally restricted, 2.6 million of that is restricted by the board through policy. And a year ago, we had $12.4 million. The majority of the difference between that and our current 9.8 million is the CERP money, which has been spent down to move forward with that project, purchase all that equipment and the like. Moving on to page 21 is our cash flow explanation. So it is the sort of the summary of the page that follows. 22 has more detail about cash flow. 21 is more condensed. So we start the month out, or the quarter out, with $9.5 million in the general fund. We got about $1.7 million in the quarter from all sources, including water bill payments, property tax payments. That's cleanup from the prior year only. Current year collections from property taxes do not start until the second quarter. So you'll see those monies coming in beginning at the 12/30 financial report. We've got some little bit of grant funding, some High Desert Medical Center reimbursement to the district, project deposits, meter installation and capacity fees of over $144,000 received. That is 8 meters, 0 in the wastewater strategy area. So you can see that our developers are avoiding that like the plague. Use of funds, we spent about $2.4 million during the quarter. We made our first CERP loan payment, so it's been a year since we took out that loan, and we made our first payment in September on that loan, $267,000. We also made our debt service payment on the Copper Mountain Mesa Assessment District during the quarter. We paid $459,000 for recharge from Mojave Water Agency, and the refund of $299,000 came back to us in the next quarter because a lot of this money was the actual banking of the water. So Mojave made a mistake and sent a bill to us. It got approved and paid, and then somebody said, oops, that was supposed to be free water that you're banking here. So a refund came in the subsequent quarter, already been received. So we incurred about $250,000 of capital costs during the quarter. That things like GeoViewer, alarm upgrades, SCADA, computer, iPad, and iPhone replacements, all of that. Replacement truck, and then a new vacuum, a piece of equipment that was purchased. We ended up with $8.8 million in the general fund and $973,000 in the SERP loan fund. Total cash decreased by about $750,000 during the quarter. So again, more detail relative to that is on page 22, so we don't need to go over that anymore. On page 23, we've got the property tax assessments. So remember that the current year property tax collections do not start until second quarter, so this reflects only the collections, the prior year cleanup. So the county kind of reconciles all their books, and we got a $32,000 cleanup in the quarter. Interestingly, prior year collections are down for both Copper Mountain and standby assessments, and that again can be an indication that property tax sales are cooling, they're slowing. Every time you sell a property, you're required to make good on all those prior tax collections. That's part of the process through escrow, and we get those payments. Last year, for example, standbys, we got $31,000 in our cleanup check. This year, $12,000, so significantly less. Can be an indication that property sales are down. On to the next page, 24, is the board report summary, which is detailed on the pages that follow. Page 25 right next to it is the detail about that. Operating revenues, 22% of budget. Remember, this is our first quarter. If everything is even throughout the year, we should be at 25%. Neither our revenues nor our expenses come in that way. We have revenues that come in lumps, property taxes as an example. We have more than $1 million in property taxes and assessments. That comes in lumps, not evenly distributed through the year. Same thing with expenses of all sorts. Water revenues, 29% of budget, pretty good number. I'd like to see that a little bit more as of this time of the year, because our highest water consumption occurs in our first quarter. August, September, typically our highest water consumption months of the year. I'd like to see that number a little bit higher, more in the 32-33% range at this time of year. High Desert Medical Center, they're billed in arrears. Property tax revenues, we haven't billed anything. There's no revenue recorded for property taxes yet. Development-related unbudgeted revenues total $71,000. Remember, we don't budget for our development fees. We consider those sort of extra. They're something that we don't want to count on. We don't want to build our budget around development fees that wax and wane, sometimes substantially over time. Expenses, production, we're at 41%. That relates to that Mojave Water Agency recharge, which is now going to, is self-correcting in our second quarter. Looks like bonds and loans is kind of high. That's at 58% year-to-date, completely normal. When we get to the detail related to bonds and notes, we've already made our 100% payment in several areas. So this is one of those things, it's not, spread evenly over 12 months of the year. A lot of our debt service payments come at the first quarter, so we're right where we should be. The SERP budget, we're at 52%, and that is related to really just the WAG that was, developing that budget and what those expenses would be, and bringing on a whole new department. So we'll be looking at probably some mid-year adjustments to that budget coming up in probably March or so. We'll be talking about that. In total, we're at 27%. Again, if we're looking incrementally, it should be 25%. So expenses are really tracking well, at this time of year. So total operating revenues exceed total operating expenses by $754,000. So everything good. Into the detail, which begins on page 25. Remember, this is the detail that supports that summary on page 24. Basic fees, we're at about 23%. That should be at 25% because basic fees are quite easily predicted. It's, there's a bill for every account every single month. We know how many accounts we have. We're close, but I also like to see that a little bit higher. Taxes, we're all at 0% used year to date because we haven't booked that revenue yet. That comes in our second quarter. Then we've got into the production, the expense section, production. You see the water recharge there, the purchase, the $338,000, and when you look at the variance, negative 338, that's because there's no budget established for that, and that money comes back to us later. So that creates nearly 41%, is the total for that department because of that, which should correct in the next quarter. Moving into the distribution department, 20% in total. I don't have any comments about anything on page 26. If you do, that I'm happy to answer. And when we get to page 27, you can see that bonds, loans, and standby section, the first full section at the top, and that's the total percent used in that department is 58.26%. Do you see that? Look right above there. You can see we're at 100% with our CMM principal. We paid our full principal payment already this year. We've paid the full municipal finance loan, the SERP loan, in full. We're at 100%. We're at 100% of our interest expense for that same loan. So several of these in this section are at 100%. So even though 58% used as of the first quarter seems high, it's not for those reasons. Okay, it's exactly what we've budgeted for. Then that next department, capital improvement replacement program, the SERP program, you can see that one account, 159.57%, and the budget in total was $13,000. So we're at 159% of a $13,000 budget. Yes, that's the expense piece of that. It's the part that can't be capitalized. So there are certain costs that are not worthy, that just by rules, by accounting rules, we're not able to capitalize. So, we guessed at what those costs would be, and, we're off there, but not huge numbers, you can tell, in total. It's not big numbers to be concerned about. Then down to the benefits department, you might look at the retirement, both the classic and the tier 2, the PERS. We're kind of high percentages, 30.95 and 41.77. Well, the district has an unfunded liability, so we owe money to PERS, and we have to pay down that unfunded liability every single year. Make that payment at the beginning of the year was $32,000. So we budget for that. It will smooth out as the year progresses. Nothing else there. Page 28, where our communications and mobile expenses are a bit high for this time of year. We're at 60.2%. We had to purchase iPads and iPhones recently, and hopefully that as well is going to smooth out over the course of the year. In total, you can see down closer to the bottom of all the figures, 27.03 is the expense total year to date. So we're just about right exactly where we should be. First quarter should be, in a perfect world, 25%. So tracking pretty close. Any questions with any of that stuff?
I have a couple of them.
Sure.
Thank you. I saw, moving to page on the cash flow summary, page 21, I saw it was a SERP loan payment of $267,000. But on page 27, I saw it says a SERP financial loan payment. I assume the P was a payment for $152,000.
Well, that's the principal. So that's the
Principal,
152.
okay.
Then right a couple lines below is the interest piece, 115.
Okay.
So those
you add
two numbers together.
Thank you.
Okay.
Makes
One is
sense.
a balance sheet cost, that has to be transferred to balance sheet, and the other is an expense. So
Makes
that's
sense.
why they have to have
Okay,
separate
now
accounts.
it adds up. The next question was actually just a comment, and that was on page 30. Did we get there yet?
Consumption? No.
Okay.
I was kind of asking for questions on the board report.
I'll hold off on that.
Oh, okay. So then on to page 30, the water sales consumption statistics. So tracking what we're selling, the water that we're selling to customers, current year, prior one, and prior year. So kind of 3 years at a glance here. Compared to last year, we have a 3.37% increase in the amount of water that was sold to customers. And last year at this time, it was a 0.13% decrease compared to the prior year. So water use is, ramping up. Remember, this does not, relate to the conservation mandate. It's different figures. This is totally what's sold, including every single customer, every account, commercial, residential, everything. And the conservation statistics focus on residential use only. So then our consumption ranking, we always look at our top 10 customers, the customers who are using the most water. Joshua Tree Parks and Rec pops to the top this month. They're often in the top 10 list, but not usually at the very top. This is their summer splash park time frame, so they're using lots of water that time of year over at the park. Interestingly, when I compared the current year to the prior year, the four groups, the housing, public agency, hospital, medical, and commercial, we show at the bottom, represents an 18% increase compared to last year. So those top 10 users, housing, multi-unit housing, public agencies, hospital and medical, and commercial, have an 18% increase in their water consumption compared to this same quarter last year.
At the MAC meeting, in Tom McCarthy's presentation, Tom McCarthy, the general manager, Mojave Water Agency, he showed us like not saving as much water per capita as like Yucca Valley, as high desert water. And it was an older report. It was ending 2018. And I know they have shifted a lot of their residential, they had like the vacation home rentals, things like that. So they took certain accounts out of residential to bring that down.
Right.
I wondered if that was part of it. But you just noticed here that this was an 18% increase, and that didn't even show up in Tom's report yet.
Right. Yeah.
I know we discussed this,
And we've done the
but-
same. We've removed the Airbnbs and that sort of stuff, and we consider them commercial now. So they're not included in the conservation reporting, because it's strictly
And I
for
think
residential.
Mr. McCarthy's was before we had done that.
Okay.
It was
Well,
like
and you
a
can see
17,
last year
18.
there was actually a decrease. So
Yeah.
if he's looking at 2018,
Yeah.
we had less water use compared to the prior year. Now we're seeing, an increase. And these top 10 users, quite an increase. Just, interesting.
Thank you.
And that is all. So, a question about that? It sounds
Okay,
like you
thank
have.
you. I noticed Joshua Tree Memorial Park.
Yes.
Usually they're a little bit higher, quite a bit higher up on the list. And did they use less water, or are they part of that 18% increase as well? And
Well,
I
let's
just
see.
noticed they slithered down to number 6.
They are commercial. I think they are the only commercial account, right? And that was actually a 20% decrease for them compared to the same last year. The housing is what really tilted the figures. There was a 38% increase in the multi-unit housing water use.
So I noticed they've been doing quite a bit of construction work and modifying grass and landscape, and ever since the drought, they have been very proactive, and so now I'm glad to hear
Yeah.
the 20%
Yeah.
decrease.
Yeah.
That shows from last year?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And now with the drought is over, people are getting a little comfortable, I'm assuming, and, but there's more to come.
Yeah. Well, and, our, Alex, our rate study consultant, shared with me, we build elasticity into the rates. So as the rates go up, we know that consumption goes down, and so we attempt to account for that in some way. And he said that, he's been in the business for quite some time, and he was around during the last, drought, serious drought, where, we got into the restrictions and that sort of stuff. And he said it can take years and sometimes never for that water use to come back. So, kind of good to see that, that it is coming back in one way. I mean, it's huge for revenue. This is the revenue. And the other way, it certainly doesn't help us meet our conservation mandates, or, challenging.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Noticed on this consumption report.
Thanks, Bob. On this consumption report, it says for the 12 months that ended on September 30, we pumped, therefore apparently used, 394,252,000 gallons of water for the year.
This is actually not what we pumped, this is what we sold, and that's why it differs from the conservation calculations. That is based on what's pumped and delivered to residential customers only. This includes everyone, and it's only what we sold, not what we pumped.
394,252,000.
Correct, gallons.
And then I noticed on the check register, just for the month of November, that we spent $27,441 for that month.
Power to pump it.
I just kind of wanted to comment, this is why we're in search of solar panels and a
Right.
place to put them.
Right.
It's because of these volumes. Every one of those 394 million gallons weighed 8 pounds, and we had to, approximately, and we had to pump them anywhere from 220 to 400 and whatever feet from under the ground. And so that's why we're thinking of doing the solar panel thing.
Yeah.
I
good
lost my
point.
place here, but on this, I found it. I'm on page 22 of 30, and I'm looking at this, in the cash flow, and it says that, funds that flowed, in for High Desert Medical Center, there's 2 entries. One is for reimbursement, and the other is for operations overhead revenue. What's that?
So, the district has a contract with High Desert Medical Center to operate their wastewater package plant on their behalf. And so the $30,275, the operations reimbursement, is the actual costs incurred. I mean, we pay an electric bill for them, there's a phone there, we have to pump that plant occasionally. Any sorts of maintenance or expenses incurred by them, we have an operator, that we contract with. Those are those costs. Those are actual real invoices that came in that we paid on their behalf. Then the operations overhead revenue is the district's cost for doing that work on their behalf. Is it 22.5% is the overhead rate that's applied to their expenses. So those are the 2 different factors. Still cheaper apparently than them doing it themselves or getting into the water business. I mean, that's, they at the beginning said they don't want to be in the water operating business, and so it works for them and for
So
us.
this is an example of how someone else is generating a cost for the district,
Right.
and we are specifically going to that source to recover that
Yes,
cost.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment at this time?
Jane Jarlsberg. This might have been more appropriate in the check register question, but it is kind of a general question. When I've reviewed the financial reports in the past, I've noticed at least a page, sometimes more than a page, of refund checks, and I just was curious what those were.
The Water District has a process when people apply for service, and by law, we can only require a guarantee deposit to secure payment on your account based on your credit worthiness. There's a law that addresses that. So when people come in and apply for an account, we run a soft credit check on them, and it gives us a rating, a green, which is great credit, no deposit required, a yellow, which is, moderate credit, got to pay a deposit, and red, which is poor credit, and we need a deposit. So you put your deposit on, in trust with us. As long as you pay your bills, then you're going to get your deposit back, and if your account gets closed, we're going to apply your final bill to your account, and we're going to send you back any money that's left. That's what Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. We open typically 50 to 100 new accounts every month. So, presumably 50 to 100 accounts are also closing each month. And not every one has a deposit associated with it because they have good credit. But any of those where there is a deposit, there's a refund. And we've been told in the past, regrettably, that we even have to refund a penny. And I'm sure some of our board members have signed checks for 5 cents and 2 cents, and of course, they end up then not getting cashed, and then we have to stop payment on them, and, you know, so. $45 worth of work for a 2-cent check, yeah.
Basically a wash.
Yes, exactly, that's us giving, right, that's us giving their money back to them, right, right. The work, yeah, just the work, yeah.
And a lot of those checks are small, you know, they're $40, $50. If you see a $100 check, that's big. Larger checks that you might see in that refund section are like plan checks. People take out, was it a couple $1,000s on for things? Yeah, and you'll see that coming back, and then that's like, wow, that's a big check.
Yeah, also, good point, reminds me that also for a construction meter, which is somebody who hangs a meter on the side of a hydrant for construction purposes, usually they're filling it with a tank, you know, putting the water into a tank, they have over a $2,000 deposit required, because the cost of those actual facilities, should they be damaged or stolen, which they have been, is in excess of $2,000, so we take a deposit in that amount.
That's very intricate.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You mentioned in passing that board members sign checks, and I think it's topical these days to point out that board members review and sign, in addition to looking at the check register once a month, we review and sign lots of checks. And there's usually 2 signatures on checks that are less than $5,000. Thank you for that information, Mr. General Manager. And if it's over $5,000, 3 people review and sign that check before it goes out.
We did that tonight before the meeting.
There you are.
Any other public comment? I'll just like to say thanks to the staff again. That was as riveting as the first time we went through it. And for those that are looking for some opportunity to engage in the district, the Finance Committee meeting is always looking for people to come and join us. With that, I'll entertain a motion to recommend that the Board of Directors receive it, accept, and file the committee report here on 1/8/2020.
So moved.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved, so done. Item number 9, General Manager's Report.
Thank you. Last week we had several leaks along La Brisa up on the north end of our district between Rice and Center. And just wanted to give an attaboy to the Construction and Maintenance Department. When they arrived on scene to fix the last leak, they had already had 4 there. And as they set the tractor in place to start digging, more were popping up. And so they, kind of fell back and regrouped and ended up replacing 200 feet of water main there to stop that from happening. So, so quite a bit of work on their behalf to kind of push in over that day last Tuesday they put. Our wastewater treatment strategy, work on that continues to move forward. I'm actually meeting with Mike Metz next week to go over some of the direction that was given by the board and then our CAC committee. So look for something next month coming back to the board on that as well. Holidays are over, so hoping to hear something back from the state rather quickly here on our 4-log submittal over to them for well 14. So didn't expect to hear too much back from them during December and January here, but hopefully in February we'll get the wheels turning on that project, or at least some direction from them on that part. On the Saddleback project, we're still maintaining about 50% of the pipe installed, but we've gone and started replacing services and fire hydrants along let's see, San Angelo Division and Torres over there. So we've already put in over 80 services, 20 fire hydrants pushed it over there. And a lot of these are, what do we call them, Susan, district funded meters, I think. So, we've got 4 streets over there that are actually in the pavement. And so we're running future service lines so that we don't have to open back that road up at a later date when somebody decides to build on a vacant lot. So that project continues to move forward really well. We've also received our encroachment permit from Caltrans, which was the last permit we were waiting for on that project. So we can go ahead and lay that 300 feet of 12-inch that we have to along the highway frontage there as part of that. So anything from the rest of the staff at all that you'd like to add? No? Good? Oh, and just some fallback for some of the meters that we replaced as well. You know, we've discussed replacing, I think we're up to close to 500 meters now, probably closer to 600, I bet, by now. You know, meter reading used to take about, well, we're up to about 15 days a month, and that's been taken all the way down to 2.5 days a month with that effort, so definitely bearing some fruit of the labor there, so. And that's it for me.
Any public comment, please?
Jane Jarlsberg again. Now I forget the context. I had a question about the increase in usage in the summer by housing, and you mentioned leaks, and I'm wondering if there's an apartment building on Hillview, just one block off the highway, that has grass, and I have several times seen water running from their yard down to the highway. And I'm just wondering if maybe leaks or maybe their irrigation system is forgotten to turn off or something, whether that might contribute to that increase. I don't know. That was just an idea.
All right, any other public comment? Hearing none, then I'll move on to item 10. Director reports on meetings attended, comments, and future agenda items. The MAC meeting on the 13th of January. I think there was a number of board members there. Rebecca?
Tom McCarthy, we talked about it a little bit earlier. General Manager for Mojave Water Agency, gave a presentation that was really easy to understand on our water, kind of where it comes from, the delta, the pipeline, and that's where the thing came up about how much we're not conserving as much as high desert. But it was a well-received presentation. It was easy to understand. He had good slides to go with it. So was really happy to have him come out and give that again.
All right. Citizens Advisory Council, and I think that's you again.
Nope.
No. Karen Tracy?
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Barbara? Frank? Okay. Going.
Frank Coates, CAC member. Last night we had a presentation given to us by the Water District. It was very interesting. Randy Little came and gave a presentation. He taught us about the wells, the reservoirs, pressure stations, just different aspects of the system, which really helps the CAC for people who aren't familiar with how the water systems work and operate. He did a very nice presentation for us. And we talked about future things coming up that we might be involved in, and General Manager had some ideas for us of things we might be going to once a month meetings rather than every other month, because we're going to get pretty busy. And I hope that happens, actually. So I'm kind of looking forward to a challenge to see if we can actually give some input to the board.
That would be great. That'd be great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Kathleen Radnich, Public Outreach. Rebecca?
Yeah, Kathleen couldn't be here tonight, but she just had one thing she wanted to report, that the Saturday class for xeriscaping has been rescheduled to February 22nd from 1 to 4 p.m. Are those held here?
Yes.
That was all Kathleen had.
All right, and you heard the report from the Finance Committee, which happened on January 8th, and I just say that it's always riveting to go through that check registry and invite one and all to attend.
It really is one of the most interesting committees for people to attend. You really learn a lot. We get a chance in an hour and a half really to tear stuff apart, and it's really, we joke about it being riveting. Actually it is, it's very interesting, and you will learn a lot. You can ask questions. It's a little less formal, certainly much less formal than a board meeting, and definitely urge everyone to come. Our next one is on next month on the 12th? Here from 9 to 10:30.
Water Resources and Operations, I guess that's Director Reynolds.
I'll take that. Normally Director Hund is the chair and he gives the report, and so I'm gonna speak off of the cuff, and it mirrors the general manager's report. We talked about the 500 plus meters installed, the Saddleback project, the 4-log progress in that, waiting for what have we, and then the CERT program. But I did want to mention on the subject of seeing water, I've noticed consistently at the CHP, right in front of the CHP building, there's water flowing on a regular basis down the highway, and that's coming from their sprinkler system.
Oh, geez.
And that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. And on the 9th of January, I attended the Mojave Water Agency, and one of the primary presenters was Gary Bird, senior accountant. And so I was just right in my little niche over there, and we were talking about water rates and debt, revenue funds, sufficient funds for Mojave. Usually they run somewhere in a neighborhood of 5%, 5 to 10%, just as a margin for them to play with. But I thought one of the things that was most interesting was what's going to happen in terms of water rates next year for us. And I think this last year we saw about a 4% increase in water rates. Well, the good news is we're only going to have about 2.5% or less this coming year. And kind of piggybacking a little bit on what Director Florin was talking about, the bulk of those expenses are transmission fees. And when you break it down per acre foot, we're getting charged, our particular area here, $155 per acre foot. So that's just a transmission or service charge on top of the water, which they already pay a service charge. I think it's $256 to Sacramento to pump the water. So when you start adding all that up, it comes to us about $645 an acre foot, which we have seen historically since I've been here. I think, I'm dating myself, water was in the neighborhood of 300. So you see where we're going. But again, another riveting meeting with lots of figures, but the price is going up, and one of the interesting things is that they always have to add in for the instability of whatever's going to happen in terms of water, because it's so unpredictable. Dry years, wet years. So, and their planning, which I really like, is usually about a 20-25 year span out. So it's always amazing to see how this comes together. With that, I'll move on to item 11, and that's future director meetings and training opportunities. And I have on the 23rd Director Unger at Mojave Water Agency. The Association of County Special Districts, that's January 27th, that's Director Reynolds. Legislative and Public Information Committee, it's February 5th, that's Director Unger and Director Florin. Our board meeting, our next board meeting will be the 5th of February. And the Mojave Water Agency TAC meeting will be Director Hun on the 6th of February. And I'll get ready to close the meeting with director comments, and I'll start with Director Reynolds.
Well, here we are. The new year is upon us. We've had goals to set and lots of work to do. I'm excited to see what 2020 brings. I want to thank everybody in attendance today. I want to recognize Tania. I don't remember your last name. Sebastian, and she's recently moved to Joshua Tree and has expressed interest in the water district, and so I invited her to come and see what it's all about, with hopes that she might be curious about the Citizens Advisory Committee. Just throw that in, and welcome. And her brand new baby is with us as well. That's all I have for tonight.
Thank you. Director Unger?
I don't have anything at this point. Just looking forward to a year with maybe not as much upheaval as we had last year. Last year we had to do divide ourselves up into voting districts. That was very, very time consuming, and I hope we've arrived at good districts. We'll know this year, it's an election year, so we'll know we have 2 districts that will be up for election, so we shall see. And so we lost the director last year. We had, we had wins, like getting the Saddleback project going, breaking ground on that. So we shall see what this year will bring, with always the uncertainty in water. Thank you.
Director Flon?
We kind of breezed over. Thanks, Bob. We sort of breezed over the minutes from the last meeting, but I noticed that it was titled as a special meeting rather than a regular meeting, and it becomes a special meeting if you change something about the time or the location. And we're empowered to do that as a board, or the general manager specifically, if we allow at least a 24-hour notice to do that. That's something from the Ralph M. Brown Act, excuse me, of 1953. The meeting was held at 5:30 on that day. And then I noticed on page 16 of 30, we had a closed session for this meeting. And there is an open meeting law, but however, there is an exemption where if you're talking about certain specific items, you're allowed to have a closed meeting where the public is restricted from attending. Both of these things are the Ralph M. Brown Act of 1953. Apparently, the San Francisco Chronicle, way back then, did a bunch of articles about smoke-filled rooms and secret meetings that were happening in that area, which resulted in this Ralph M. Brown Act, which is one of the reasons Mike Lipsitz is here right now from Z1077. We have to notify public media when there's going to be a meeting. There has to be an agenda. It has to be posted outside on the wall. It has to be, the agenda has to be available for people in the lobby. That's the Ralph M. Brown Act of 1953. There's a sign-in sheet there where people can sign in, but you don't have to, because the Ralph M. the Ralph M. Brown Act says that you do not have to sign in, identify yourself, pay a fee, do anything to attend a meeting. And I just mention it because with the county supervisor thing, you're hearing a lot of things about the Brown Act and violations and who's going to be our supervisor and all that. And I can tell you that here, the Ralph M. Brown Act is very active, it's very alive, everybody adheres to it as best as they possibly can. And I'm proud of that. Thank you.
And we take training on the Ralph M. Brown Act.
Boy, do we.
Yeah, it can last the day, and it's it's an important tool for the public. Thank you, Tom.
And I'll close out. I'd just like to say to the staff, thank you for all the hard work. It was a tough year last year in many respects, and we hit some highs, and we are moving forward, and I'm encouraged about the future. I want to thank the folks on the CAC. I'm really excited to see that kind of just, spearheading and getting moving again. I had the opportunity back in the day to sit on there, and we were challenged and certainly learned a lot. So, kudos to you guys. Keep moving forward. I want to remember our men and women in uniform, our first responders, all those that are a little bit less fortunate than ourselves. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Yes.